Torrential rains since June 2022 triggered massive floods across Pakistan. It resulted in hundreds of deaths and one-third of the country being underwater. The destruction caused by the floods forced thousands of people with no other option but to live in tents and makeshift houses. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif ensured to provide immediate relief to the flood-affected victims and made this as government's topmost priority. Postponing his foreign tours, the Prime Minister visited every flood-affected area of the country to monitor the rescue and relief activities. On August 25, 2022, the government of Pakistan declared a national emergency to address the country's growing flood crisis. Pakistan produces less than 1% of global carbon emissions, but is one of the countries most vulnerable to the climate crisis. Becoming the voice of millions of people around the globe whose lives and livelihoods have been destroyed by climate calamities, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif raised the issue of global warming and its impact on developing countries.
What happened in Pakistan will not stay in Pakistan. Life in Pakistan has changed forever. Why are my people paying the price of such high global warming through no fault of ours? Unprecedented rains and flooding that have submerged more than 1/3 of my country are without any doubt the consequence of global warming and climate change. We became a victim of something with which we had nothing to do. And of course, it was a man-made disaster. We wouldn't want that tomorrow, God forbid, some other country should become a victim of this climate-induced disaster. It is now or never. For us, there is indeed no planet B. Devastating floods in Pakistan are most definitely climate change induced. The leaders of the world come together to act and act now on an agreed common agenda.
Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif pressed the case for a loss and damage financial mechanism for developing countries hit by climate disasters.
The latest estimates have calculated loss and damage at $30 billion. It is therefore entirely reasonable to expect some approximation of justice for this loss and damage. The current financing gap is too high to sustain any real recovery needs of those on the front lines of climate catastrophe. At the broader level, we seek to add loss and damage to the climate agenda. If we have to fight and rebuild and repair our infrastructure, which has to be resilient and adaptive, then of course we can only do through additional funding, not through additional loans and debts. Loss and damage needs to be part of the core agenda of COP27. It is the duty and responsibility of Global North to understand our difficulties and our plight. I hope this conference will not only listen to this message loud and clear, but convey this to all who have the power and financial muscle to change the course of history. What goes on in Pakistan will not stay in Pakistan.
Pakistan, as chair of the Group of 77, and China galvanized support for the establishment of the fund in COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. First by having it placed on the agenda of the conference and then pushing for a consensus agreement. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's strong advocacy for climate justice has paid off as the countries at the United Nations COP27 summit agreed to establish a loss and damage fund for climate impact in developing countries.
We listened to the calls of anguish and despair resonating from one end of Pakistan to the other, a country with literally more than a third of its area flooded. A resounding alarm of the future that awaits us beyond 1.5 degrees. We heard the calls and we responded. Today, here in Sharm el-Sheikh, we established the first ever dedicated fund for loss and damage, a fund that has been so long in the making.
Pakistan's Minister for Climate Change, Shehri Rahman, was one of the stars of the Sharm el-Sheikh Climate Change Conference COP27. She earned praise from the national and global communities for her relentless effort to present Pakistan's case.
We have struggled for 30 years on this path, and today in Sharm el-Sheikh, this journey has achieved its first positive milestone. The establishment of a fund is not about dispensing charity. It is clearly a down payment on the longer investment in our joint futures. It is a down payment and an investment in climate justice.
Calling it the first pivotal step towards the goal of climate justice, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif lauded the establishment of a loss and damage fund at the United Nations COP27 Climate Summit.
And it is for the first time that international forum, through a dedicated teamwork, Pakistan's voice was heard, loud and clear.
This is, I believe, a great success because a drop of water brings towards more water.
Convener National Parliamentary Task Force on Sustainable Development Goals, Ms. Romina Khurshid Alam, who is a tireless advocate for action on climate change at the national and international level, believes that clear mechanisms and processes are required to ensure efficient disbursement and deployment of funds between countries.
The Parliament of Pakistan, when we hosted that IPU conference, regional seminar here in Pakistan, we got a success. We have done the lobbying to bring this thing on the General Assembly's agenda of IPU. This is something just started. We cannot put our hopes high on that. We still believe that we need to come up with a pressure group on that we need to have the disbursement mechanism of that. We have seen that in the previous COPs as well, that they have allocated the budget. But what that budget was being distributed among those countries, that's also a big question.
Terming the Loss and Damage Fund as a realization of the climate challenge by the Global North, the Prime Minister emphasized the need for practical implementation of the agreement as the disaster faced by Pakistan could also hit others in the future. He appreciated the efforts of all those involved for achieving which was almost impossible.
Our friends in Global North, they should and they have realized the importance of this challenge. And that's why it's been a remarkable agreement in Sharm el-Sheikh. Loss and damage is now a reality. But then it's not about these agreements and understandings. It's about practical implementation, manifestation of these commitments. Loss and damage was something like a sleeping beauty for decades. But for the first time, it was articulated most ably by our team, led by Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto, by Mohtarama Shehri Rahman Sahiba, and she did a terrific job at Sharm el-Sheikh, and I am a witness to all this.
Establishment of the Loss and Damage Fund is a great first step. Now it remains to be seen how soon this translates into action.